So thank you for joining me today. I'd first like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I'm meeting you all on today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders all across the country that we call home. And I just want to recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. I also want to recognise the immense value that lived experience has to contribute to suicide prevention in this country. And I really believe it's integral to continuing these conversations about how we best treat suicide in our country, to include the voices of lived experience. Today, we're going to be talking about suicide-related topics, but shouldn't be delving too deeply into any traumatic lived experience stories. But if something comes up for you while you're listening to the chat today, please enact your self-care strategies and reach out to someone that you trust to support you through what you might be going through. Today's topic of the professional series is on starting your own suicide prevention organisation, and it's something that people often come to from a place of lived experience. They see a gap in the way that we deal with suicide in society, and they want to make a change, and they do that by starting their own organisation. And so this chat today with Ali Taylor, who's done just that, started Listen Up Music, which is a fantastic organisation that works to boost mental health among music industry professionals. He's going to be sharing a bit of his experience doing that and the journey coming from, doing things on a small level for other organisations right through to now running his own organisation. But before I throw over to Ali to introduce himself, just a little bit about me. I'm Hayley Purdon. I started CriticLE as a way of prompting some real critical thought around lived experience engagement in the suicide prevention space. It's something I'm really passionate about, really having deep conversations about how we can better embed lived experience in the work that we do. I come from an advocacy background, and so really passionate about having these kind of conversations about what are the different sorts of roles that lived experience can do in the suicide prevention space. So over to you, Ali, just to give yourself a brief introduction.
Thank you, Hayley. Yes, I'm Ali Taylor. I have been working in the mental health and suicide prevention space for over 10 years now, a little bit in the UK before emigrating to Australia, but pretty much the whole time that I've been in Australia has been in one way, shape or form in this space. I'm the CEO of Listen Up Music, as Hayley has mentioned, but also have had roles working as the wellbeing manager for the Woolworths Group, and also currently working as senior project officer for Black Dog Institute. So yes, very passionate for this space, not solely in the music industry, but across the entire country, and really want to make as much of a difference as I possibly can.
Great, thanks, Ali. Today I've got some prepared questions, but if you want to jump in and ask your own questions, pop them in the chat or just interrupt the conversation. Otherwise, we'll open it up for a bit more of a relaxed discussion at the end of the session. So to kick us off, Ali, can you tell me a little bit about how Listen Up Music came to be formalised as an organisation?
Yeah, so Listen Up Music was born out of a previous entity, which was focused on the arts more generally, and people's love of music, movies, sport, TV, anything that people were passionate about, and bringing people together through making lists about their favorite topics in those areas. And through that, there was some incredible things that were done as myself as a sole trader running that organization. But what was quickly becoming apparent was, because we were so broad, we weren't really able to have the level of impact that I wanted when I first decided to set out in that space. So out of that, and my passion and my background in music and my family's background in music, it was decided that we should focus on music more specifically. As we'll get into, Hayley, that's starting off again as me as a sole trader, and then making a decision to formalize that more as a charitable organization.
So even like before that, Ali, because Ali and I met when I was working for Suicide Prevention Australia, and Ali was fundraising for the organisation, doing some really great things in bringing people together to you know, build community and boost mental health, but also to raise money for different charities. And I know they're not the only charity that you used to raise money for. So is that really where it kind of all started for you?
Yeah, it all started, as a lot of things with this, by chance. So doing exactly that, Hayley, you know, getting people together to talk about music, and having one of these music nights where people were talking about their favorite songs. And it was really just a seed that was planted at the very first one of those that I did here in Australia with our new neighbours and friends. And someone just said, have you ever thought of doing something for charity with these events? And I hadn't at that stage, and that seed planting just never really went away. And I thought, I'm bringing these people together, and we're passionate about music. I'm sure they'll be passionate about other topics too. And through my family's and my lived experience, it was always going to be a mental health charity that we were going to look to raise funds for. So I just began picking up the phone and sending out emails to anybody who would listen, people, organizations who would like to donate things for a raffle, or to you know, record messages of support or things like that. And so the next event we did, we said we were going to start to raise money. And at that stage, Suicide Prevention Australia were the charity that we chose. And yeah, so it just came from that. And then that event where we were expecting to raise a couple $100, and we raised about $4,000 from memory. We realized, well, actually this has got legs, and this should be something that we explore further.
And it was a really fantastic initiative. It really brought people together. And one of my favorite memories of that time is when I moved to Canberra and I didn't have a community around me, and we had the official top 10 games night. It wasn't music focused, it was based on games, and you managed to get all of these games donated. And I was able to bring a whole group of people around, and that was a really great way to kind of settle into the community down here, to have this games night, and really spewing that we didn't win the Trivial Pursuit Cup that night.
There is something about it though, you know, like you said with games, you find something that you're passionate about, that's not the real specific left field things, you know, like games or music or movies or TV or anything. And you know, you bring people together and get them talking about those things, not with a view to trying to break down doors or open conversations about the tougher things, but you just find that with those type of things, there are always those bigger stories attached to them. So yeah, so you know, when you're moving to Canberra and you don't have community, what better way than putting a bit of competitive gamesmanship in it? And you know, everyone wants to, as much as they say, oh, I'm not competitive, you put Hungry Hippos or Trivial Pursuit or something in front of a group of people, you'll see that it brings out the competitive side in most.
Yeah, and I was speaking to somebody recently, and they said to me that they believe that suicide prevention needs to be moving less like away from preventing death and more about promoting life, and those kinds of things really do, they're on that promoting life side, rather than like they're a suicide prevention activity in their own right, because they help people to stay well and functioning in the world.
Absolutely.
But I also want to ask, what then shifted for you? You had these really successful events where you're raising money for another organization. What then moved you into the, oh, I want to start my own organization kind of realm?
There was a lot of mini steps, but I guess the 2 or 3 major things that happened along the way were, after doing those events and doing them in my local community with my friendship group or my professional relationship groups, I realized that they were having an impact on us, on those people in a small scale. And I was being more and more exposed to the high numbers of suicides and mental illness across the country. And it just didn't sit well with me that I wasn't able to reach more people with what we were doing. And part of that came down to confusion around what the entity was set up as, and the fact that we did do games, but we did sport and we did a movie night and we did this. And people were really finding it hard to connect unless they spent a lot of time with me being taken across all the offerings. So rather than me deciding what the future should be, I went out to our community and sent a poll and just said, if we were to become a bit more laser focused about what we do, which of these areas do you think that we should focus on? And 79% of people who responded said music, and they said that was where it started for you. It was the very first night that you did. And you know, if it had been 50-50 or a smaller number than 79, I don't think we would have at that stage. I don't think I would have just gone all in on music, but it was so overwhelmingly large number that and there was something good about bringing it back to where it started, that we I decided at that stage that we should focus on music. And at the time I was working with one other person as a contractor who then became a bigger part of Listen Up afterwards. But yeah, we looked at rebranding and what an organization focused on music should be. And for about a year, we operated still as a sole trader, working within the music industry, before some other things started to take shape, which led to us deciding to become a charity.
And you mentioned being a sole trader. Were you making any money for you, or just purely making the money to donate to other organizations? Like, how did that practically work?
I remember vividly the first conversation I ever had with Suicide Prevention Australia when we were looking to raise money for them. And I said, I'm not looking to make any money from this. It's not a business. I have my full-time job. This is just something I'm passionate about. And I said, I'm thinking that 90% of the funds that we bring in, we should give to you. And I remember the reaction at the time, which was, this, you need to go and do your homework, because this doesn't happen anywhere else. You know, if you want to continue and you want to grow and expand, then that 10% isn't going to work. So I think for the first couple, we worked on an 80-20 split. So the 20% really just covered costs of putting on these little mini events. And then when it became Listen Up Music and we rebranded and we started to really have interesting conversations about the enormity of what needed to be done in the space, that's when it started to drop for me, that having this small percentage of money, the larger amount was out of my control in terms of what that was being spent on. And I think that was definitely one of the first things in my head to go, should we consider or should we look into becoming an organization ourselves? Because I had a very distinct vision in my head of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. So yeah, it started as 90%, then to about 80. And then after that, again, we started looking down the charity route.
And what happened in that process of looking at the charity route? Did you have like people around you to help you make that decision, or was it just you as a sole trader?
So it was myself and one other who was working with me at the time, and we looked at, first of all, formalizing a relationship with an existing not-for-profit, not just on a one-off fundraising agreement, but could we do something more formally, and could we have a two-way path in terms of the things that we did and we could tap into? Could we tap into your existing network to get to more people to do these things? And it quickly became apparent that there weren't really any organizations that were keen on that sort of relationship. They themselves had their own strategy and priorities, and they were happy for us to do one-off fundraisers, but there wasn't anything more formal. So then at that stage, I started to look at what other organizations there were, and if we were looking at focusing solely on the music industry, what was there in the music industry in both the prevention space, the postvention space, and anything just more generally in the mental health space. And it quickly became apparent that there were some sizable gaps with what we wanted to do, where we wouldn't really be treading on any toes. But more importantly, we found that there wasn't anybody else doing what we were doing, or what we wanted to do, which I think is often where organizations or people considering to become organizations fall down, because they don't do that research or background to see what's already existing.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's really key to kind of get a feel for what's already out there. Like it's one thing to have an idea and say there's this gap that I see because I didn't have that in my own personal experience and I want to plug that. But really it's important to be looking a little bit more broadly and talking to other organizations and seeing what's out there, so that you're making sure that what you're going to put up is something that's worthy of putting up.
Absolutely. And so that you're not just treading on people's toes, and from a relationship perspective as well. Yeah, there's so many considerations that need to go into just that part of looking at what else exists, because even if it doesn't exist exactly in the way that you have it in your mind that you'd like to do it, who's to say that's not on someone's roadmap, or that there isn't someone similar who might like to collaborate or work with you. So yeah, that's why it took a year from rebranding to Listen Up to becoming a charity, because there were so many things that we wanted to make sure that we'd done all the right due diligence on.
Yeah, that's something that I really connect with CriticLE. I've worked with so many different organizations for years and through them affected a lot of change and steered things in certain directions. But yeah, in starting CriticLE, I got to a place where the changes that I hear from people and see in the sector weren't actually happening. And so starting CriticLE is my way of kind of driving that change. But one thing I haven't done is formalized as a charity. That seems really unachievable to me as an individual. Like, how much work is involved in starting a charity, getting it registered, and doing all the bureaucracy that comes behind having a formal entity?
So it depends on who you talk to or where you go to. So I have friends and colleagues who work in charities or have started their own charities or for purpose organizations. So I did a lot of talking to them first. And what was really apparent was that every single person had a different experience, and everybody else had a different opinion on how long things would take. So I think the shortest that someone said was 3 months from first conversation to formalizing, and the longest was about a year. And for me, that was a big consideration, because if it was going to take a year to do this outside of my day job and family and everything else, like how much work was that going to be? Because at that stage there was just me and one other. So the reason why I'm pausing is I would say that the harder work happened from the day that we formed formally as a charity for that first 12 months, as opposed to what it went through to get to that stage, because so much of it was unknown after that moment. But in terms of going through the process, we were really lucky. We worked with a fabulous chartered accountant firm who talked us through everything, got all of our paperwork ready, and really talked us through all the steps that needed to happen from a formal perspective of getting the charity in place. And from my memory, that was probably the hardest thing, was the multiple meetings that we had to have. And once we'd initially put everything to the chartered accountants, and this is what we want it to look like, we had to work out what our constitution was, what our reason to be was, our mission, our values, all that sort of stuff. And the to and froing after that, when we thought we've landed it first time, look at us, we're great, and saying, actually, this doesn't fit into this category. The things that you're going to be working on don't align with the type of charity you've decided that you want to be, because we're an incorporated charity. So all of that stuff was the bit that was, I think, just not time consuming in terms of how much time in a week, but just how long the process takes from deciding you're going to do it to all the back and forward with the paperwork until you land on, okay, this looks like it's all right now, and then submitting it, and then the waiting period for someone to review it. And of course, we were the unlucky one that had the caseworker was on holiday for 6 weeks, and it got passed to someone else, got pushed to the bottom of the pile, and all that sort of stuff happened. And then once we got the decision that we were able to become a charity, then the hard work really happened, because we were like, okay, well, now we've got to do what we said that we were going to do. So.
Yeah. And you had a few, you used a few words of terminology like chartered accountant and charity by limited charity. Like, are there different types of charities, and like, do you need some kind of, you talked about enlisting the help of friends. Do you need people who have done this before to help you through it? Like, those words are not like everyday language.
Of course. Yeah. So the easy one first. So yes, there are a number of different types of charity. So ours is what's called a charity that's limited by guarantee. I'm not going to pretend to know all the different types and what they all mean, but based on the fact that we were a health promotion charity, we fell into the category of being a charity that is limited by guarantee. That's what we had to do. It's terrible that I don't know what all the different ones are, but there are quite a few, and they're all unique in their different ways. So, but going through the process of picking the type of charity you are, the type of work you want to do, and where it focuses for, that part gets figured out pretty quickly as to which one you would be. In terms of the friends piece, so I don't think you need to lean on lots of friends and people who've worked in the space. I just had those people, and I just wanted to really have some assurances after I'd made the decision this is something I wanted to explore, that I wasn't making a mistake, or that there wasn't anything I hadn't thought of, or, you know, like anyone that's had any experience, it's always interesting to know what they found along the way. So I think the biggest support they gave me was supporting the decision that we should become a charity, as opposed to any help once we started the actual formal process.
Okay. And so you've just registered as a charity, and you mentioned that wasn't the hard part. What came next was the hard part. What were some of the things that took you by surprise after you'd got registered as a charity? Like, that seems like a big win for me, and that it's smooth sailing from there, but it wasn't your experience.
There were definitely some big wins and some real highlights in that first year as well. But in terms of the things that I didn't foresee, or the challenges in the immediate few months after we incorporated, the first one is that I had been used to working for a number of years on my own, with my own vision and my own plan. And if I had an idea that I wanted to do something with, I could turn that around in 24 hours without any permission from anybody. As long as I had my own funds to make it happen, I could make it happen. And a big part of setting up as a charity is that you need a board of directors, and you need a minimum of 3 or a maximum of 9. And then you have to have appointed within those directors a chair and a secretary and a treasurer, and they all have their own duties. And then the overall responsibility that those board members have for the success of the charity, and the decision making that goes with really any major decisions. So if I wanted to put on a new set of events, or I wanted to create a new program and take it out to the public, all of that stuff had to go through the board and be discussed and be put forward, as you know, and all this new terminology of forwarding motions and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. I didn't realize just how in depth that would be, but also how formal the whole piece was, with, you know, the meeting cadence and the minutes and the language that we had to use for certain things, the policies, processes, all of that, which before that had all existed in my head, or as documented as I wanted it to be, now suddenly needed to be formalized from day one. and there were minimum things that had to be in place that had to happen within 30 days, 90 days, whatever. So the board, where I thought inviting people to be on the board would be, a fun thing and really easy. We'd get together, we'd talk about stuff, we'd celebrate the wins, and we'd, celebrate together at events and everything else. It was actually from day one, okay, you're on the board now, here are the expectations, here is the list of things that we would like you to do, and here's the responsibility that goes with that role, all of which was completely new to me. And that's just at a board level. So yeah, there was a number of other things that were challenging too, but also the doors that were supposed to be opened by becoming a charity, we, in those first few months, started to reap the benefit of some of the things that we couldn't have done had we remained as a sole trader.
And what are some of those things?
So the major one is the funding pool that you then become eligible for. So certain grants, certain donations, fundraisers, all of those things that I'd been on the other side of the fence doing those for other people or other organizations. So now we were eligible to be the recipient for those. But also, strangely, in conversation with individuals and organizations, when I was approaching them about anything that we wanted to do, the fact that we were a not-for-profit, I certainly felt that conversations were more favorably received as opposed to when I was a sole trader. And not because I was calling to ask for a handout, but just because there was a mission, vision, and purpose of a charity that an organization could actually get behind, as opposed to, oh, there's this guy who's doing all this great stuff, can we give him some money? So, so those things happened pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, okay. So what you're saying is it kind of gave you more authority as a mental health promotion kind of group.
Yeah, the recognition that went with that, absolutely. That, okay, well, this, just saying to somebody that you work for a not-for-profit organization, immediately, as opposed to I'm a person who's passionate about mental health and I want to do some stuff in it. It just gave these people or organizations the permission almost to get involved, whereas before it was always difficult to know how they could support. Whereas as a charity, there's so many different ways that a charity can be supported. So yeah, I've definitely noticed that difference.
And I suppose it gives them the benefit of being a tax deductible donation. As a deductible gift recipient, they get a benefit in return for giving you money, whereas they wouldn't have gotten that if you were a sole trader kind of a thing. Yeah,
definitely. And I've actually seen that more at a organizational level rather than individual level. Individuals, if they're going to donate, the deductible recipient part actually doesn't make a huge difference to whether they're going to or not. It's obviously a nice benefit, but if they're already going to be donating or looking for an organization, but from an organizational level, the fact that that there's those offerings for their staff, if they're wanting to do so, to donate, much easier for them to get that kind of stuff across the line.
So you've had it both ways, off doing it on your own or supporting other organizations, and now running it or doing all the same things, but through your own charity. What would you recommend as the best way to go about it for people who are kind of like at the start of considering maybe starting an organization?
I would say not to jump in too soon. The option's always going to be there for you to be or to apply to become a not-for-profit organization. I think that if you are wanting to test a number of different things to see what's working with the community, or to do a lot of polling, or getting out into community and making connections and things like that, I think that part of it, certainly in the early stages, is easier when you're not a not-for-profit, because you've got that nimbleness to be able to just switch gears really quickly. And I think when you're doing all of that groundwork, it's really important to be able to go and do that. And, you know, the things that are in your head, go and test whether they are actually needed or wanted out in community. But I think when you've got that and you've got everything clear and you've been through that work to work out what your purpose is, and that you have something that you are very confident is resonating with whatever size community or group of people that you're putting that out to, then I think that having the formality of having a charitable organization probably opens more doors than it would if you were doing it yourself, particularly if those things are going to need funding, because the funding pool that is available, obviously none of it's guaranteed, but the funding pool that's available is much larger if you're a not-for-profit.
Yeah, okay. And I suppose one final question from me about the practicalities of running a charity. You spoke about working for this organization and that organization, and all the while doing everything that you've talked about with the mental health promotion music stuff. How does it work having a job and running a charity at the same time? Like, is it something that's achievable, or does it have to be one or the other? How does that work in practice?
I think that's the interesting part about being a charity versus sole trader, is when you're a sole trader, you can carve out time at whatever time of day or night. And, you know, if you're passionate enough about it and you want to make it a success aside from your work, then you'll just find the time to do that. The thing about being a charity is, with that board of directors and the team of volunteers that you'll undoubtedly build up over time, you have passionate people there who are also involved. And whilst they're never going to have the same level of passion as you do with your own vision for an organization, if they're passionate enough to sit on a volunteer board, or they're going to volunteer their time to help at events or launching programs or whatever it may be, there's people there to lighten the load. So you don't feel like you're doing it on your own, which means that actually, I'm not saying you do less work, but there's just more input, more voices, there's more experience there. So some of the things that would take a long time for you to go on the journey on your own with might be cut in half, because there's somebody within that team, that broader team, that can help you work a bit smarter. So yes, I think it's achievable. I wouldn't suggest to anybody who's thinking of taking on charity work on top of their job to do it unless they're really passionate about it, because the work just won't be done. 10 years plus in this space, and I'm still as passionate, if not more passionate, than I ever have been. So yeah, it needs extreme organization, and that's something that I'd like to think I have in spades. So and it's not for the faint-hearted, but I think that the reward and the impact is well worth the extra hours.
Yeah, and I just want to pick up on something that you said about having people around you to kind of lighten the load. That's something that we're hearing a lot in these sessions. It's so important for people with lived experience who are really passionate and do so much work in this space to have a community around them, because it can be really isolating. You can be up against people who disagree with you and actively work to discredit you, but with people around you, you have that support network, and you know, two voices are much louder than one in this space. Yeah.
And do you know what, Hayley? I mean, it's a conversation for another time, but which is one I'd certainly love to have with whoever would like to have a conversation with me. But I find that as well with over the years of all the different people I've spoken to, when you relate that to an internal perspective, everyone is completely, fully supportive of it. And one thing that in this space that I think is needed much better quality of is the collaboration and the community between people who are working in organizations in this space. So if they only applied the passion that they have for and the positive thinking that they have behind this lightening the load with people internally, and I applied that to externally with getting like-minded organizations together to collaborate and work together, then we could also see much greater impact as well. But there's a lot to unpack there, and we can't do that today. So,
well, it's something that we spoke about in preparing for this session, because both Ali and I met at a time when people were creating organizations, charities of their own idea, left, right, and center. And instead of working with other people with similar goals, they were carving out a piece that was purely their own, but doing the same work as other people, and that leads to competition for funding, and so funds are really stretched thin, and organizations are able to only do just a little bit instead of a lot with a huge amount of resources behind them. It's a very important conversation to have, and I agree, it's the reason why CriticLE exists, is because of that lack of true collaboration and partnership that organizations should really be having with each other and individuals who are out there doing this work.
And I know it's something we've said since the beginning when we first met, Hayley, as well, which is when you boil this space down to its simplest form of the fact that people are working in this space because we want to encourage people to choose life. Why is there competition amongst people who are trying to have the same goal? Like, I don't care at all if there's somebody who has made themselves aware to me that they are contemplating suicide. I don't care if it's charity B, C, D, E, F, as long as they find a way to stay with us. It doesn't matter. We're all working for the same goal. So why there has to be so much competition, and why there has to be so many organizations created in everyone's individual visions. And I realized that potentially could be seen by people to be one of those people. But, you know, I do feel that we did the homework and the due diligence before setting up, that there wasn't anything happening that we were doing in this space. So, but yeah, it is an important conversation, and one that I do feel that I would like to see over the next few years. I would like to see that gap shortened.
Well, I do think Listen Up Music embraces that philosophy. The organization works with so many different other organizations, and particularly outside of the health space, to form those kind of partnerships and work in a group manner. So, you know, if people see Listen Up Music as trying to push a single agenda with no collaboration, I think that they're very wrong.
I appreciate that, Hayley, and that's definitely been done purposely as well. You know, there's so many great people and organizations doing great things, and I'm not a fan of creating work for work's sake. If something exists already that is working in a space that you know, that we want to help with, or that aligns with the other things that we're doing, then I'm all for working with people and using what great things they've come up with.
Yeah. So now in the last 10-15 minutes, I just want to open it up to those who are with us today. If you have any comments or questions or thoughts you want to share.
Ali, I have a question.
Yeah.
Ali, it appeared to me you started off as a fundraiser for other charities, if I got it right.
That's right.
And at some stage, you've changed that model from now no longer being a fundraiser for others. You're in a position where people can fundraise for you. So you must now be providing a service you didn't do first up. First of all, you had the ability to raise money. Now people are raising money for you. I'm just not clear on the service that you offer. I don't know enough about your organisation.
Sure. No, it's a good question. Thank you, Graham. So yes, our services and our offerings have evolved since the day that we incorporated. At that time, we ran an annual competition for songwriters, and now, in addition to that, we've now expanded that, and we offer mental health program, which is designed specifically for music industry professionals. So people to get involved in mental health and suicide prevention activities through a number of different modules. but also our focus changed. So when we were fundraising for other charities that was for the general populace, our work now is for music industry professionals. So through building community through our events, which is a big part, the community and connectedness, and offering opportunities for musicians to both perform and be involved in our live events, but also on the program side, ensuring that we are helping them to develop and maintain positive mental health through our training programs and our other mental health offerings.
So if I'm in the music industry and struggling, you're my home.
We absolutely would love to be your home, yes. And the one thing that we do say is that if we don't have the exact thing that you're looking for, then through those partnerships and collaborations, we absolutely have people who would be able to help. But yes, the community is the biggest part of what we do, and coming along to any of our events or being a part of anything that we do, you are instantly connected to so many other people, which give you that feeling of home. Absolutely.
A couple more about structure. Are you a membership organisation? Do people join your one? So if I'm a struggling musician, I can join you as a group?
Yes, so we do have a membership program, that's right.
Are there different stages of membership? Is there a fee to be a member? How does that work?
Yeah, there's an annual fee, which gets you, depending on whether you're a music industry professional or a music lover, there are different offerings in terms of what you get by being a member of our organisation. But yes, there's an annual fee of $25, so it's not doesn't break the bank.
No, but it's important to pay to belong in some respects. Yes. At scale, how many members?
As of last count, we were about 55, I think, members. So, okay. And interestingly, we're doing a lot of work on our membership program at the moment because the music and the arts in general have had a particularly rough time the last few years, not just from a mental health perspective, but financially as well. So we're, whilst we have a much bigger number than that part of our community, we're trying to look at what barriers of entry there are for people to be formal members without the fee being a barrier for entry, which is why there's a slight disconnect between our membership number and our community number.
My last one on all that, size of the organisation, and do you have paid staff or are they all volunteers?
So we have 7 members of our board at the moment. I'm the only paid employee. And then we have roughly 10 members of our ambassador program, which tend to be more high profile musicians. And then we have a volunteer team of anywhere between 10 to 15 in various parts of the country for when we run our regional events.
Good stuff. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
One of the cool things about Listen Up Music that Ali was trying to put into practice is a mental health music festival, where people can go listen to music and then be exposed to mental health promotion kind of materials as well, which was really cool. I'd never heard of anything that was similar to that. Graham, a little bit like what John does over in WA with the Raising the Vibe that we spoke about when he did his session. Similar kind of thing like to that.
Yeah, that's that was a big thing to get off the ground. That was talked about for a number of years and obviously impacted hugely by the pandemic, being able to get it off the ground. But yeah, just the same thing. I was sick of seeing all these music festivals where they had a token charity tent in the corner of a field that no one was going to, and felt that mental health deserved to be front and center at music festivals. So yeah, one of the biggest remits for the performers was you can play the festival, but you have to play your torch song, which is essentially the notion that everyone has a torch song, which is the song that either guides them out of the darkness into the light, or gets you through tough times. And all the performers had to play their own torch song as part of their set. So when they were talking about the torch song, the people in the audience were able to see parts of themselves in the performers and realize that they're not alone in their struggles. So yeah, there wasn't, like Hayley said, we couldn't find anything again that existed like that. And you know, hopefully this year, when things are much less restricted, we'll be able to bring that back in some way, shape or form later this year.
Apart from performers and musicians, do promoters embraced your charity?
Yeah, we're really proud of the reputation that we have within the industry. We're definitely still seen as a smaller grassroots charity, which I think is slightly unfair in some respects because of the breadth of the country that we have launched things or brought events or services to. Plus there's you know, the landscape of arts and music charities. You know, it's not an easy space in terms of promotion, but certainly the people that we work with, whether that be promoters or studios or engineers, or they're all very positive in the things that they say. So I'm very keen to hold on to that reputation as well, because as we know, that that also has the ability to open doors, but also close them as well if that's impacted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ali, before we wrap up, is there any like specific win or your favorite moment in this journey that you've been through that you wanted to share today?
Wow. There's so many. There's kind of two that are competing. One is what we did for our community, and one is what we did as an organization. The day that we had our launch event and announced that we became a charity was a really big moment for us, especially given the 12 months leading up to that, to getting to that point. And now, especially looking back on it, seeing how what's happened since then, it's really fun. It's really nice to look back on that moment. I think the one that sticks out is we're going to be launching year 9 of our songwriting competition this year. So thinking back to the first grand final we had and crowning the winner for that songwriting competition, which when we launched it, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like, I want to do a competition. I want to discover some musicians. I want to discover some songwriters, and I want to see if we put a mental health theme out there, how many people are going to actually enter and be interested in this. And yeah, and seeing the winners that flew up from Victoria, it was the very first thing they'd ever entered, and they got all the way to the final and won it. And seeing what those members of that band have done since and where they've gone on to, it's just been, yeah, a really proud moment, almost a kind of fatherly moment as well, just seeing these people green in the music industry and seeing all the successes that they've had since. So I think that's probably the one that I'd settle on. But if you ask me on a different day, Hayley, there'd probably be others.
Well, you've certainly had a lot of achievements, and since I've known you, you've made a big impact on my life as well. Since meeting each other all those years ago, like, your enthusiasm is so infectious, and you've brought me along on so many rides that I never thought that I would go on, just because I want to support the work that you do. But thank you so much for supporting the work that I'm doing today, and for being here and sharing your story with us. Really appreciate it, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about it.
Thank you so much, Hayley. Yes, I am both grateful for you coming on so many journeys with me, but also apologetic for any of them that weren't quite what you expected as well. And I'm sure there'll be many more, but thank you very much for having me.
Right, well, thank you all for being here today. If anything difficult has come up for you, please, as I said earlier, reach out to somebody that you trust. And I hope to see you again soon at another one of these events from CriticLE.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.